Good to see all of you once again. I hope all of you had a delicious meal. So I must tell you that till day for yesterday in the morning, we were not sure whether we will go ahead with this particular fireside chat. Simply because we had invited someone from a largest bank of the country, and he got, an emergency assignment, so he had to leave for Delhi. And most of the people whom I wanted to, whom I had invited, said that perhaps, there is nothing much happening in this particular area after a lot of goof-ups happened with the large institutions launching super apps. So I had only one option, whether to let it go and drop the panel discussion or drop this topic and maybe do some activity. But then I spoke to someone whom I know in Revolut, and I thought, let me try. And I spoke to your team, and Saleem is here. So the last candidate we closed for this particular event was Saleem, and I'm really glad and looking forward to have this discussion. Also because the whole world of BFSI is talking about how the branch will become branchless, work will become workless, and app will become super app. And that's why I thought in the world of super apps, we'll try to demystify from a player which is already there globally and trying to do so many things. So let me get into the conversation directly, and maybe I will also ask all of you if you have any one or two quick questions to ask Saleem. So Saleem, the basic premise of this super apps is to put everything together. So we are already converting 5,000 square feet branches to a 5-inch smartphone. And now we are actually trying to cover the 5,000 kilometers of area into the 5-inch smartphone. That's where the super app is. But I would like you to tell us and give us your version of why super apps are important, what is the importance of super apps, and what makes super app.
Yeah, definitely. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here. Even though it was a last-minute invite, I'm glad I could make it.
Sure.
So I think super apps evolved over time. So eventually, when apps started, there was an app for everything.
Hold the mic
Yeah,
closer.
definitely. So when apps started, there was an app for everything. You had multiple apps, and you had specialist apps that did some things. So as things progressed, people decided we need to have functionalities put together. And I mean, super apps aren't new things. You had calculators in one. They did scientific stuff. You did all sorts of things in it, and it kind of grew. So that's so also for the products that are in the real world space. But if you look at banking as such, and that's where and we are in a BFSI conference, so I think we'll give a little bit of focus on what super apps are. So financial institutions start off with offering what's their core product, what they want to do, what they excel in. And then they look to see how they can expand and get into other areas which are revenue generating and which offer convenience to customer. And that's how super apps grow out. It's like trying to understand what the customer needs, what else could they supply either directly or indirectly. So by definition, a super app is an amalgamation of all sorts of different functionality brought together, but hopefully strung together with a common theme. So if you look at financial super apps, you could start off with banking, cards, loans, lending, and then moving into the the gray areas of banking, and like crypto and crypto trading and all of those things, which are gray in India, but are pretty much valid all over the place. And then they move into then looking at what other services can we offer. There could be bill payments, top-ups, remittance services, etc. And then the apps and the screens expand to offer all of these different services.
Sure, Saleem. So now I have a very important question, or rather I would like you to explain us how the whole integration works. Because there are a lot of companies which have launched super apps or apps as such, which I don't think have a customer support system. The UI and UX part is really remarkable. You love it. But the moment you have any issue, there is no one to resolve it. So just tell us how the actual integration happens from the front end to back end, what goes into it, and what are the challenges are there specifically in the super apps?
So I think one of the key principles is user experience, and I think that is fundamental to how the app pans out. The customer journeys that come in, the way the customer is made to navigate to fulfill all of these needs, that is something that has to come out really slick and paramount. Because otherwise what you'd have is a spaghetti of things and people not knowing how to get there and use that. Now that is then actually supported by a plethora of integrations. You've got a wide number of integration points that come in. Every different provider has different logins. How do you maintain your customer's identity across all of these different systems? How do you make sure that there's no duplication of accounts on a different partner site? So you could do a bill payment directly from your app, or you could be logging into the bill payment system as well. How do you keep that updated? How do you reconcile the payments and make sure extra payments are not taken when you have direct auto debits and things like that? But I think the main part really here is if someone really has a problem, it's about starting from that point, customer service knowing what's going on, and the ability to, in the back end, also be able to see, have visibility of what's going on in your partner space, or become that window to resolving the customer's problem, not sending the customer on a wild goose chase to speak with their, with any of the downstream systems, be it buying an insurance, paying a bill payment, etc. They should all have some sort of a mechanism to be able to contact the downstream party, retrieve the information. And all of this, again, comes down to how the app is presented. If one of the services is down, you can't have, you need to build the app in a way that it is resilient. Even if a service is down, it's, that window is not tiled, it doesn't hang the app. The app is still performant in its own way. The APIs connecting in bring relevant data in, and there's nothing that hangs the app and crashes the app if one of the services is down.
Sure, quite meaningful. So I will also take the question from the audience after this. So please, I will ask my team to prepare the mics. So the question that I will, maybe it's not a question, Saleem. What I would like to understand is how, like you said, all this retrieving information and all this should happen in real time, right?
Absolutely.
Because ultimately the question, I use Uber quite often, or sometimes Ola also, and the question that comes to my mind, does the team sitting in a corporate office of Uber ever knows how this car looks like, or whether this car has a AC working or non-working, right? And whether the customer is facing any challenge. So at the same way, if a super app is offering maybe your shopping solutions or maybe some grocery solutions, do they know that the customer is actually getting the right products? How can a owner or a founder of a super app can control all these things and offer a better customer experience and not just a UI and UX?
Yeah, I think this is it's a very complex problem, and the solution is just as complex, I think. So a lot of these things become gateways into something else, and the get out of jail card is usually terms and conditions which say that they're not responsible for services or for downstream, but I think there is a responsibility to make sure if something does go wrong, how can you step in, make sure you get your money back, etc., and then work with partners to then see, looking at how many complaints are coming up, ensure quality of service, and also while onboarding your partners, you look at the credibility of the partner. You want to make sure that they are reputable in the market, and you've done your due diligence, and then you've got your SLAs signed up with them, and a way to redress grievances, etc.
Sure, Saleem. Let me take some questions. Anybody has? Yes, I think the second row, gentleman first, and then I will come to you. In the first row.
Yeah, thank you very much. Very good afternoon to all of you.
Yes.
And thank you for having this chat on this particular topic. My name is Imad Nakfa. I'm from HDFC Bank. So the chat started with the point where we were discussing how super apps could probably replace the 500 square feet branch to a 5-inch phone. So, I mean, I think it's pretty debatable, and I would like to know what your perspective is, because all the top banks today are going deeper into the country and opening more branches, especially taking it to the non-bank, to the underbanked people. So as we are speaking, there are more branches coming up. So the super apps are here to deliver something value added, and while the branches act as the first point of delivery to the non-banked and the unbanked. That's the question. So what's your perspective? Yeah.
Basically, how can super apps be a branch itself? Right?
Yes.
You want to add something?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't think anything can replace a branch, because I think there's a different market segment for different things. As literacy increases, tech adoption increases, people get more and more comfortable with using the app. I think then that becomes a point. Like if I take my dad, for example, he's like, laptops for banking, mobile phone is for WhatsApp. That's a clear demarcation in his head. He's not going to do that. He's 75, bless him. But there are, as we get more and more comfortable being away from people, not having that human contact, I think people will lean towards super apps to do it. There's always live chat, video technology, all of that can come in to supplement the human at the other side. But if you talk about getting down to the grassroots where you are trying to build trust, etc., then definitely branches add value, because it's the name at the top of the door. And while you could be a completely branchless bank, then there has to be a head office. There has got to be something. It's a matter of time, and as people evolve and understand that this is the new normal, I think until that time, there has to be a coexistence. And while we move the branches away from the cities, it's very, very important to get it down to the grassroots where it's actually needed, where you're trying to drive financial literacy. And that can come in with actual humans talking to other people and driving it at the grassroots level, getting into the villages, getting into their women empowerment, getting financial inclusion. I think that's where humans really, really add value. While you can have programs and other things that are video-based, I think it's always important to have a physical presence.
Okay, sure. I think the one difference that I see between the branches and the super app is perhaps super app will not take a lunch break, which the branches or the branch office do, right? So yeah, can I have the question from the lady in the first row? Yeah.
So my question is more as a consumer. As we all know, right, in today's world, I think if you take anybody's mobile phone, at least in the cities, you would find, on an average, 40 apps. Or I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but yeah. So one thing what I have recently read is that these apps, the biggest challenge as a consumer is to maintain passwords across the apps, right? And so because of that, we have a common password for most of the apps. And that's one of the reasons, or one of the main reasons how the malicious actors get into your system. So your advice on how do we maintain, manage these apps in a more secure way?
I think sharing of passwords between apps is not recommended. Sharing of passwords between people is not recommended. But that said, you're definitely going to want to share passwords because it's easier across your apps at least. But I think what happens now is like iPhones and Android, you can save your passwords and you can have complex passwords that you save, and those are password protected as well. But I think there is a lot of app security that comes in because when you try to install it on a different phone, it asks for you to send an OTP, etc. So I think there's a lot of onus on banks as well and financial institutions as well to ensure that when an app is getting installed on a different phone, there's a different level of security or a two-factor authentication put in place. So that should help minimize all of this. Then behavioral analytics and other things as well.
Yeah. Sure. But it's a very valid point, and I remember Gartner came with a report, I think 5 to 6 years back, and they clearly said all the vulnerabilities or specifically the cyber hacks happens because of the mobile apps most than the desktops, because at least on desktop you can see the URL, whether it's correct or not, but on the mobile app you cannot because it's a small screen and people are generally tempted to click the URLs and the links. So thanks for raising that question. But I want to ask you more, Saleem, in terms of the synchronization of the tech. How long generally does it take for these partnerships, and how the revenue sharing model works between the the one who's actually dominating as a super app and partnering with thousands of vendors, maybe like Amazon is doing that. So how that synchronization happens, how the revenue share model works, and how successful, profitable it is for a founder who's launching that super app.
Yeah, I think it's all down to negotiations. So there's always a win-win partnership that people arrive at. There's a revenue share depending on the. It all comes down to how much leverage one has against, or how much you can actually bring prices down to. There's usually standard revenue sharing models. It depends. Again, it's not very specific because it varies across the type of offering that you have. So for some big ticket items, you could have a lion's share, and some of them you could actually just be offering it because it's a hygiene factor needs to be offered, even though you don't make any money on it.
Any other questions that we have from the audience? Yes, please go ahead.
Hi, Saleem. My name is Arshad. I'm the founder of NewCash. We are building a neobank for college kids. I've used Revolut in the US. Beautiful app. But I think going to the topic of super apps, what's your philosophy about telecoms going into fintech, fintech going into e-commerce? It's like everyone's trying to do everything. And if you look at history 10 years ago, Facebook tried to do similar, where it started with social network, and they went into commerce, they went into like marketplace, and none of them were like blazingly successful. I think there are very few instances of successful super apps or a super company that have done phenomenally well. So what's your personal opinion on super apps, and where do you draw the line of how many products do you offer and in which domain? And what's Revolut's philosophy in general, specific to the Indian market?
Absolutely. So my personal opinion is, like I started, there's a fine line and a common theme between what services you offer, and then there's a periphery around which you stop. And then, like you rightly said, it just gets cluttered, and you're unable to manage either customer expectations or your own fulfillment of the need. And if you talk about Revolut's philosophy, Revolut's really, our founders been very, very focused on what the customer feels, how, what the look and feel of the app is. He's very, very particular about how every screen comes across to the customer. So what you'll find is the app is really slick. It's got only financial stuff put together in it. It doesn't realm outside. You could get discounts and other things, but they happen kind of as vouchers and outside of that. And I think the philosophy is to keep it slick, simple, and very, very customer friendly.
Okay. One last question, if anyone has. Okay. So generally, what happens? Saleem, you must be aware about the data, right, and the network issues that we face. So earlier, I used to take maybe a distance from Chembur to Sion to download one PDF. Now I'm still in Chembur, and it takes only Chembur for me to download because of the traffic and everything. So my question to you is, Saleem, you must be using the high-end infrastructure, breaking down the monolithic structures so that you can build a great infrastructure. But still, everything is dependent on the data. Right?
Yes.
If the data is not there, if the network is not good, nothing can happen. The transactions can fail and everything. So what is the alternative that you provide to please your customers? Because you must have factored that because of data, certain transactions will fail. Because of data, the reconciliation settlement will not happen timely. So how do you consider that, and what is the alternative that you offer?
I think there's a couple of ways to break this down. One is breaking it down into what are read transactions and what are execute transactions. Read transactions are something that even if the data is not there, can be cached on the system. Whereas if you're actually executing a payment, then that needs to be connected because you've got to make sure that the money isn't double spent, etc. And all of these happen as atomic transactions. So you make sure that once the message reaches the server, then the payment gets executed, and then only then a confirmation comes back. And then there's no, the entire execution thing has to reach the server, get processed, and then comes back. And if anything fails, then there's a end of day reconciliation, or even there the atomic transaction will always roll back. So it's about accounting for data latency, also trying to see what can be loaded up in the background. Say, for example, you've swiped your card, you can always push it back to your app so that your app doesn't need to load it at the time of when somebody reads it. It's already come there and it's waiting in the app for when the customer actually opens up the app.
Yeah, Sure. Last two quick questions. The gentleman already asked you, but let me drag that forward. What are Revolt's plan in India? When are you going to launch your super app in full phase manner?
I think we are getting through a number of hoops, and being an international company, the biggest challenge we face is data localization, and I think we want to be adhering to the local laws and legislation. So putting out our infrastructure into India, that's what's been taking time. We've been working through regulatory relationships, etc. Things are going really well for us. You should hear something in the news very soon about what our plans are.
No, sure, you share the news with us so that we can publish. And the last, there are many companies, promoting themselves, presenting themselves, and positioning themselves as a super app. Which one is your favorite?
My personal favorite, I think, is Paytm.
Okay. Sure. So thanks, Saleem, I think, for that information, and I think we'll wrap up here. Thank you so much for your participation and questions. Thank you.